European ministers meet in Paris to discuss the Italian proposal to expel other EU citizens if they cannot support themselves. After the French crackdown on Roma, is the EU facing deep divisions, and are they abiding by EU rules? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Hazem Seeker. Deciding the fate of the Roma population in Europe. EU immigration ministers meet in Paris on Monday. Also known as gypsies, they've been under the spotlight since July when the French government announced a crackdown on their camps. Since then, thousands have been repatriated to Romania and Bulgaria. Recently, Italy announced similar plans to expel its Roma population. The migrant group has been accused of breeding crime, but as Laurence Lee reports, many of them just want to live a normal life.
Next to a railway line and stuck outside the Paris city limits doesn't look like a promising place to live, but this project is a testament to the resilience of people in adversity. These small, cheaply built houses are all homes to Roma families. The courtyard is spotless. Everywhere there are expressions of people taking care of their surroundings. Even the smallest children speak good French and some English too.
My name is Arabella.
Muntian Chrysanthema works in demolition. His wife's a seamstress. The kids are all at school with the same hopes and dreams as anybody else.
School is very important because if you don't have school, you do nothing in life. You can't work, you'll be on the street. It's everything for life you learn.
The stereotypical view of Roma people is that they're incapable of living like this, that they're beyond help. Yet this place could not be better organised.
It's the care with which the Roma people have treated these new surroundings that's so striking, and in such stark contrast to the squalor of most of the camps. The moral of the story from here seems to be that if you treat people with just an element of dignity, they're perfectly capable of behaving like any other human being.
The project only came into being at all because the camp the families were living in was damaged by fire and they were all made homeless. After a mountain of effort by a charity, the local authority agreed to put the houses up if the Roma agreed to get a job and put their children in school. These families jumped at the chance.
People have to stop thinking they are thieves. It's a prejudice which the president has only made worse. It makes me feel sick because they're people like everyone else who just want a house and the possibility to work. That's all.
After a few hours here, you begin to forget you're with Roma people at all. Given that they're stuck outside Paris, it's hardly as though they've been given much chance to show people how keen they are to integrate. But still, it's better than the alternative.
In the slum, you live in fear. You live today, but you don't know what will happen tomorrow. The first thing about this place is the people here are more relaxed. There is security here, which means you're being watched, but you're being protected as well.
This was the first attempt France ever made to give the Roma a chance in this way. It obviously paid off. Outside their commune, though, it seems much of France knows nothing of the potential many Roma have to act like anybody else.
Well, joining us now are our guests. In Paris, Saimir Millet, he's the president of the minority rights group, The Voice of Roma. In Strasbourg, Daniel van der Stoep, he's a member of the European Parliament representing the Party for Freedom. That's a Dutch party led by the controversial politician Geert Wilders. And in Brussels, Ian Traynor, he's European editor of the British newspaper The Guardian. Gentlemen, I want to welcome all of you to the discussion. Daniel van der Stoep, if I could start with you. Why should these people be expelled? I mean, aren't these expulsions undermining their right as EU citizens to simply move freely within the law?
Well, first of all, I don't know whether they should be expelled. That's up to the French government. As far as I can see, they act within their rights under international law, under
support their
expulsion,
would you?
Well, I don't know why they are expelled. I know, for instance, in the Netherlands that the Roma people, that they have put themselves outside of the society, as stated by the socialist minister last year. And I know that 75% of all Roma in the Netherlands have criminal records. So I don't know if that's the same in France, but I think foremost that France has its own right whether or not to expel people. Of course, they have to abide by European and international law, and as far as I can see, they do that.
But if we go by what we heard in that report, in the right environment, there's no reason at all, surely, why Roma can't be productive members of society. And what countries like France and Italy are doing is simply trying to get more support for a policy that targets groups like this on the basis of their ethnicity. Isn't that what it's all about?
Well, I don't think it's based on their ethnicity. As the French are saying, what they do is they look at every individual individually, and they've also expelled other kind of groups of the society. And essentially, what your question is whether or not does a member state of the European Union has the right to expel EU citizens who do not abide by the law. And in my firm belief, they should have much more possibilities than they do have now. And that's exactly what the ministers in Paris are talking about. And I think they're right to discuss these issues outside of the European Union context.
Ian Traynor, why is this happening now? Is this all about politics?
Certainly a large political factor here. Obviously, President Sarkozy has been trailing in the opinion polls, and he is co-opting a lot of the vote to the right of his centre-right party, and it seems to be paying off. I mean, there's been a wave of criticism of the French government's conduct internationally, but also domestically and among the political elites, and even within his own cabinet for that matter. But it does seem to be quite a popular policy, and he is rebounding in the opinion polls. So I would seek clues as to his decisions and conduct in his domestic political situation rather than any particularly huge Roma problem.
Saimir Millet, in your opinion, are these expulsions legal under EU law?
They are not. I want to recall what said the MEP who talked before and who illustrates very well the spirit of some European politicians. Actually, the ideology of his party, as of other parties of this family, of this political family in Europe, have found another strategy than, rather than getting the power, they are infiltrating the parties who get the power in a traditional way in different countries of Europe. And what the central right government is putting in place in France actually is nothing more, nothing less than a series of ideas of the Front National, of the National Front, which is an extreme right-wing party. And we can feel that in the discourse of the MEP who told before, about criminality, about sovereignty. Each state of European Union decides alone of what he does with the immigration, which is true only partly because all these measures at the national level should respect the European rules which are defined in the frame of the European Union, and the freedom of circulation is the basis of the European Union. I know that in this political family, the European Union is not something that they like so much, but this is the reality, still, at least.
All right, let's put some of that to Daniel van der Stoep. I mean, isn't this a case of some of the European states like France and Italy trying to take matters into their own hands here when there really needs to be more of a Europe-wide comprehensive policy here?
Well, first of all, I want to comment on my previous speaker that I'm not a part, or neither is my party, of a political family, especially not from the Front National. So I just wanted to state that. And the second part of your question, or the first part, was that, of course, it's some countries are binding together to create some sort of cooperation outside of the European Union. And that is because there are a lot of problems with the multicultural society that the other countries apparently don't find important enough. And I think it's very good that finally some countries realize that they don't have to put their own immigration policy in the hands of Europe, because Europe don't care about those kinds of policies. And it's very good that they finally act and they finally try to take matters in their own hands and see how they can improve the situation for European citizens within their own countries to extradite people from EU countries who don't abide by the law. And I think that's a very good thing. And then on the other hand, if those people, If the Roma don't agree with the expulsions, which they did voluntarily, as far as I heard from the news right now, if they don't agree with me, they can seek local remedies and finally get to the European Court of Human Rights and let them decide. It's a legal question which has to be put before a legal court, which shouldn't be handled here within the European Union, within the European Commission or within European Parliament. It's a legal matter and let the law decide.
Ian Traynor, I mean, one of the criticisms that's been made of this meeting of the European ministers is how selective it's been. The countries like Romania and Bulgaria haven't been invited. I mean, isn't that part of the problem? If you're going to get a group of European ministers together to tackle this issue, then you need to invite those countries from where the Roma originated. And isn't this going to cause more division?
Well, it's a very controversial, contentious issue within the European Union as well, of course, including here in Brussels with the European Commission. The commissioners in charge of justice, human rights, immigration, law and order, etc., policing, neither were they invited to this meeting in Paris. The government in Paris seemed to be bringing together a bunch of not necessarily all like-minded ministers, but looking for some kind of legitimation internationally and on a European scale of their policies. It was only when President Barroso, the head of the European Commission, went on the phone to President Sarkozy that the European Commissioner in charge of this issue was also invited to Paris. So it's they're playing a bit of politics here again, divide and rule. And of course, the formal agenda of the meeting is not the Roma or the Gypsies. It is about just toughening immigration and illegal immigration here. But when we're talking about the Roma in Europe, of course, we're not actually really talking about an immigration issue. I mean, I'm Scottish and I'm living in Brussels, and these people have the same rights as I have. They're European citizens moving within the 2004 Directive of European Law and Freedom of Movement to countries of their choice. Now, that freedom is not unconditional, of course. There are conditions attached to it, but to suggest, as the French government has been suggesting, that these people are responsible for soaring crime rates, for prostitution, pickpocketing, thieving, burgling, begging, and so on and so forth, the speed with which it's happened suggests that they have not applied due diligence and they have not applied the law properly, because you can't do this on a collective basis. You have to do it on an individual, one-by-one basis, and it's a time-consuming process. You have to present the evidence on an individual case. There must be a proper judicial approach. The person has the right of appeal, etc. So these are some of the issues concerning the legality of this. And also, of course, the French are saying that the vast majority of these so-called expulsions are actually voluntary returns, because the Gypsies or Roma are having to sign pieces of paper, take €300, be put on a plane, and then return to Romania or Bulgaria, or wherever it is. There are also big questions are being asked as to whether that really is voluntary.
Saimir Millet, I mean, if I could put this to you, why is it so difficult for Roma to integrate? Is it all just discrimination? Are they suffering from problems of their own making? I mean, we mentioned there the crime problems and the poverty and so on.
Well, we are about 10 to 12 millions of us within the European Union. Those who are integrated, I put this in brackets, those who are integrated represent some 45 to 50% of this whole population. The rest, who is not integrated in terms of integration as it is now conceived, well, this is the result of processes of racism and of anti-Gypsyism, which is secular in Europe. It lasts for 300-400 years, even more, many times. So it is not a question of integration. We have a problem of integration of the European Union, of the institutions of the European Union. The processes of integration of the European Union is in crisis, and very often we see that this crisis goes to the top. We are Europeans more than many other populations in Europe, because one single family very often lives in 4 or 5 countries, European countries. So all this is about populism. It is just populism. We speak about criminality, but which people in the world is totally free from any forms of criminality? We have among us criminals, but this is not our feature. We have among
but
us also
the figures do show. Sorry to interrupt. The figures do show that statistics for crime among Roma are markedly higher than among other groups. I mean, why do you think that is then? Is that all simply discrimination? Or is there, I mean, people would say there is a certain amount of responsibility that comes down, personal responsibility that comes down here?
No, this is just fake. The statistics are fake. In France, France being an egalitarist country, in France institutions have not the right to make ethnic statistics, and they did not do such statistics. At least officially, they never announced ethnic statistics. They did it only on the basis of the nationality, meaning the criminality of Romanian citizens in France. And they targeted only Romanian citizens charged with crimes in France. They don't do the same for other foreigners. All the foreign criminality is one figure, and they targeted just Romanians, and then again they transmitted that, they extrapolated and said the Roma are those who are committing those crimes. So this is fake from the very beginning and till the end of the communication of the government.
Ian Traynor, if we look at this simply from an economic point of view, I mean, it's been estimated that the financial cost of failing to integrate the Roma properly here and simply moving them somewhere else is actually more costly than dealing with the problem head on here. I mean, are there enough people within the European community who will eventually see things that way, that it's actually more productive to make a concerted effort to integrate these people, and it will actually work out better economically in the long run?
Well, I think that's a fairly obvious and very rational argument, and here in Brussels and the European Commission in terms of budgets and social funds and projects and developmental funds, etc., the emphasis will be very much on that. These people don't have anywhere else to go. They are Europeans. And it has to be added, of course, that these people are completely marginalised, completely discriminated against everywhere, not just in Western Europe, where they're being deported from Italy. And we just heard at the weekend that the mayor of Rome wants to close down a couple of hundred camps as well, for example. But in the countries where they are indigenous or where they've been living, in Romania, Bulgaria, Slovakia, Hungary, the Czech Republic, there's a long, long history of marginalisation, no education, no development, discrimination, and so on and so forth. And now there's billions of money being made available to try and tackle some of this, both from the Brussels budget and from NGOs and other philanthropists like George Soros, for example, who is very active on the issue in Central and Eastern Europe. But it's a big, big problem. It's a generational thing. I mean, it basically reminds me
I mean, you bring up a valid point there. I mean, this is a problem that goes back a very long time. I mean, but are countries like Romania and Bulgaria suddenly going to deal with this just because a few Western governments or even the EU as a whole tells them to?
Well, it's in their interest in the longer term to deal with it because they are their citizens as well, and they're very large minorities. And as you're suggesting, the problems of not dealing with it means that you'll end up with bigger problems than if you try and integrate. What I would say is that it is a very long term, a generational thing. It does remind me a bit, let's say, of the civil rights movement in the United States in the 1950s and 60s, where the black population, of course, suffered grievous discrimination and lack of civil rights and so on and so forth. And it's taken, things are not ideal even now, but of course they're immeasurably improved in the past 2 generations if you go back 40 years. I would say this is a problem on that kind of scale, and it requires as well political activism, political representation. This is the biggest minority in Europe, as the colleague says, up to 12 million or so. What you really need, of course, is political parties and MPs and government ministers and people in the elites and in the education systems and so on and so forth, representing that rather large constituency.
Daniel van Stoep, I mean, isn't this simply shifting the problem somewhere else? I mean, in these difficult economic times, money's tight, budgets of the state are tight. So, people will say that it's simply a matter of sending these people back home, and they'll be somebody else's problem. Is that how you see it?
Well, in these difficult times, those are arguments that are being used by the left for every kind of policy that they are creating right now. So I wouldn't say that, but shifting the problems is not what I mean. It's about sovereignty. And
but that's essentially what you're doing. I mean, by supporting this action by countries like France and Italy to have the Roma people repatriated back to their countries of origin, you're just moving the problem somewhere else, aren't you? And there's also every chance that they could simply come back.
Let's first say that I don't exactly approve about what's happening now because I don't know about the individual situations. As far as I can see now, that France is following the law, Italy is following the law. That's my main issue. They're abiding by the law, and if there are any problems, people can seek local remedies. That's one thing. And it's not shifting the problem because, let's face it, the biggest problem is the fact that we let Romania and Hungary be members of the European Union in the first place. These are extremely corrupt countries, and as we can see now, the people who are causing problems there are going to the West. You can't blame them, but as soon as they start making troubles here, it's not just Rome, it's also people from Poland, from Romanians and Bulgarians. We should have the right to just expel them from our country, just because they are not abiding by the law. And that's the flaw within the European Union at this moment, and we are trying everything to change that, and therefore I think the meeting in Paris right now is a very good thing.
Saimir Milei, should countries like Romania and Bulgaria be doing a lot more to solve these problems?
All of the countries of the European Union should do something. Very often they do nothing at all. But if we compare Romania with France, for instance, in terms of legislation, of public policy towards minorities in general and Roms as well as a minority in Romania, the Romanian government is an example for France, which has also a minority policy, which doesn't say its name because minorities are not recognized by constitution here, but there is in France a special status for the French Roms. So it is rather in the other sense that this should happen. Romania have some things to transmit to France in terms of minority treatment. Then, to go to the European level as such, we have proposed what is happening currently in France. It is totally illegal because, of course, every country has the right to expel people for a reason of public order and so on. But this is not what is happening now. French government is expulsing massively, collectively people and with no reasons of public order. No one of those who were sent the last month to Romania had a file in police. So in the European level, as we are 12 million of us, we have worked 10 years ago in 2000, and we have produced a proposal to the European Union, which is a document of 25 pages, a frame statute of the Romani people in European Union. This is a guide of action for the European Union.
All right. Unfortunately, that is going to have to be the last word.
The only structure who supported
we are unfortunately out of time, so we're going to have to end the discussion here. It will be interesting to see how all of this does play out over the next few weeks. But I want to thank all of our guests for taking part in the discussion. Saimir Milei in Paris, Daniel van der Stoep in Strasbourg, and Ian Traynor in Brussels. Gentlemen, many thanks for your time. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye for now.